whenever I'm telling the story, like, 1 year high school, walked on to play in college at D3, and then hustled my way into playing pro ball. It sounds a lot more heroic than it felt. I'm not a big fan of everything in moderation. I don't like when I even hear people say that. Yeah. It just sounds like average. It just reeks of averageness, being in the middle. Yeah, just joining the masses.
You never once said, someone saw me play and gave me a full ride, offer, invitation, like literally nothing ever, period. Which is so relatable to entrepreneurs. Welcome back to Gathering the Kings podcast. I'm your host, Chaz Wolfe, and today we are joined by Dre Baldwin, a former basketball player, pro basketball player turned entrepreneur and author. Dre's journey from Philadelphia to the global stage and his transition from athlete to keynote speaker on the TEDx stage, not once, not twice, but 4 times and counting. He's written 11 books, has over 48 million views on YouTube, and is truly inspiring. He's here to share not only his insights on mental toughness and confidence and discipline, but his work on your game program so that you can elevate, go to the next level. Here we go. Welcome, Dre Baldwin, to the King's stage. My brother, how we doing?
I'm doing excellent, Chaz. How are you?
Today's Wednesday. I love Wednesdays. Really, sure. I love every day. You do too, though, right?
Yeah, I mean, doesn't matter what day it is.
That's right. It's another day to get it. Dre, I'm excited for this conversation. You have a super unique background that the listeners just got to listen to in the intro, but tell us what kind of business that you have.
Well, I hope I can live up to that intro.
Yeah.
But as far as my business it's called Work on Your Game, Chaz. It all sprouted from my background as an athlete. I was putting content online. Before that was a normal thing to do. And just for basketball players, just teaching them how to actually literally play basketball. And they just started asking me questions about my mindset because they found out about my background, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit. And I just started talking about the mental tools that I was utilizing to excel as an athlete. So things like showing up consistently and believing in yourself and having the mental toughness to deal with setbacks and not sitting around waiting for someone to do something for you, but going in, kind of creating opportunities for yourself. And when I started talking about those things, of course, the players appreciated it, but people who didn't play sports started hearing those messages. Yeah. And they said, well, Dre, this stuff applies to people who are off the basketball court as well. So that was kind of like the light bulb moment that told me what my segue would be out of the sports realm into the professional and business realm. And I've been there ever since. So I stopped playing ball in 2015 and pretty much been doing that. Our framework is based around, yes, mindset, also strategy, systems, accountability. Been doing that for almost the last 10 years full time.
Wow, I love it. And of course, you've been on some cool stages and spoken in front of crowds and really been able to develop a message really of this mental toughness. We're going to get into some of that, but the truth is that you've gotten to where you have been, not by happenstance, because you said you had to kind of create some opportunities for yourself. Give us just a quick, you played ball, but like you and I as ball players, you played professionally way above where I was, but we know what that means, but give us just a little bit of the history, but then what does it mean to play at that level? Because it was up there.
Yeah, interesting question. So I was always into sports growing up. Got around to basketball by around age 14, which is pretty late if you're trying to go somewhere in the sport,
That's
like
right.
Play college ball or play professionally, let alone professionally. So I only played 1 year in high school, sat the bench the 1 year I was on the team. Wow. I like to tell people I had a front row seat to all the games right there on the bench. Front row seat. And got out of high school. I knew I was going to go to college, period. But as far as sports goes, it's not like I was being recruited. No one was checking for me because I hadn't done anything in high school, because your high school performance gets you into college as far as sports goes.
Yeah.
So I walked on to play in college. That was at the Division III level. For those who don't know what walking on means, it means you literally just walk in there and you try to play your way into an opportunity because you were not invited. Nobody knew you were coming. And I did that, but it was only at the D3 level, which does not produce the pro players. So again, people who don't know the sports world, Division I college sports is the stuff you see on television. Then you have Division II, which you rarely see, and then Division III, which you never see, the guys down in the basement. And most of us at the Division III level, Chaz, are not even thinking about playing pro. They usually don't have ambitions of pro ball. That's why we're playing D3, because we usually don't have the pedigree to be professional players. But being that I was kind of a late bloomer, as I told you, I started late, I could still feel myself getting better. So getting out of college, I felt like I could play pro ball, but the rest of the world did not agree. So again, no one was calling me to play pro ball when I got out of college. So my first year out of school, I worked a couple quote unquote regular jobs. I worked at Foot Locker, selling sneakers. I worked at a gym called Valley Total Fitness selling memberships. And Bally's is out of business now, but not because of me. I sold a lot of memberships at Bally's in the summer of 2005. So again, everybody, time frame 2005. I went to this event called an exposure camp, which is like a job fair for athletes.
Yeah.
You go there, you pay to go there. It's not free. You pay, and it's basically a casting call. So a bunch of people who all think they're good enough to play pro, same thing I did. We all show up and we all basically play ball for 2 days trying to impress somebody. And the audience are people who can help you. Agents, scouts, coaches, owners from teams all over the world. They come to these events to find people like us, but not everybody's going to get a job. So I went to that event, played pretty well. I leveraged my performance there. I didn't get signed on the spot, but I leveraged that performance into finding me an agent. And an agent is basically the go-between between the job and the person who wants the job. That was me. And my agent helped me get my first job. So I got my first playing job, playing professionally in late summer 2005 in Toughness, Lithuania. So that started what became an almost 10-year-long professional basketball career. So that's how I got started in pro ball.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so glad that you gave that story exactly the way that you did. You gave it exactly how I wanted you to, because I wanted the listener to hear all of the roadblocks. You never once said, someone saw me play and gave me a full ride, offer, invitation, like literally nothing ever, period, which is so relatable to entrepreneurs. And I know that you know this. I know this, but the listener might have heard your bio and been like, oh, dude played professional ball. Of course he's mentally tough and high level and, naturally gifted and all the things, right? What would you say to that?
Well, a lot of people assume that, right? And I don't always correct them, Chaz. So sometimes I just let them think it.
Hey, that's all right.
Depending on who I'm talking to, depends on how much time we have, right? Because now I have to explain all this.
That's right.
But yeah, you're absolutely right that when I tell people, hey, well, my background's as an athlete, they just assume all these things.
That's right.
They assume, oh, well, of course you have talent. Of course you have always been the person who was selected. Of course you've always been a person who was chosen. You don't know anything about not being chosen, having to work your way up, having to go create an opportunity, because our vision of a professional athlete is, which is true, is these people who are in the top 1 or 2% of the thing that they do. And it's not because we just worked our way into it. You have to have a certain amount of, you got to hit a certain genetic lottery to be a professional athlete. That's just the truth. Yeah. Now, a lot of athletes don't like talking about that because it kind of diminishes their superhero status, but you have to hit the genetic lottery in a way. I'm 6 feet 4 inches tall. My dad's like 5'8". My mom's like 5'7". I got lucky. All right, had I been their height, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
That's right.
At least not with this frame.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's part of the deal. So yes, people do make that assumption, but then once they hear about the background, then they get a whole different perspective. So you're right about that.
Yeah. And I want to give just a smidge more context here, because I think this piece here is going to launch us into a lot of the things that you teach people on a regular basis. But now knowing your backdrop, knowing that okay, my story actually lines up to yours quite a bit. I knew I wasn't going to play D1. And so I actually stopped playing in high school because I could foresee not playing D1 and not playing professionally, going, well, if I'm not going to make money doing this, I want to stop now and start making money. So I'm at Foot Locker selling sneakers too and slinging. 2005, about the same timeline.
We were colleagues.
I was going to say, look, I'm 6'4", my mom's 5'7", and my dad's 5'9". So look, I don't know if we're the same human or not, but here's what I'm saying.
Right. We got to do a DNA test.
Yeah. And for the listeners and the ones that aren't watching, that'll be funnier later when you look us up online. The opportunity here for the listener, hearing your story and just like 10 seconds of mine and how it's like yours, is that single mom family. I had to create the opportunity. I chose no basketball, but business instead, because I had been making money on my own since I was 13. So what do you say for the guy listening right now who's like, okay, I hear you. I hear the truth in both of your stories, but how does that apply to me? What do I do with that?
That's a great question. Well, the first thing I would, of course, get more context from that person, but being I don't know who that person is they have to decide where they want to go. What's their outcome? Because it's an interesting thing you said there, Chaz, and you said you knew you weren't going to make money playing basketball, so you decided to, let's put that aside. I'm sure you still maybe played at the rec center, at the playground, or you watched the games, but you knew you weren't going to dedicate your life to it because you wanted to do something that made you money. But you knew your goal was to make money. And if it wasn't going to be through basketball, let's find a way that it is going to be. Let me find the right vehicle. So in our space, I had this thing called the 12 work on your game commandments. Don't ask me to name all 12 because I don't know them all off the top of my head. But one of them is the right vehicle. You have to be in the right vehicle to get to where you want to go.
Yeah.
And I find that a lot of people, especially in the sports world, and I mean, it's your show, so I want to interview you, but I find in the sports world that a lot of athletes, they get really stubborn and kind of pig-headed about that when it's clear the writing's on the wall that they're not going to do it in that thing.
Yeah.
But they don't know when to give it up.
That's right.
They don't know when to walk away in strength. I call it walking away in strength because it's not like you just fell on your face and did nothing in basketball. You decided this is not going to be my thing. Let me do something else.
Yeah.
But a lot of athletes who I talked to over the years, they didn't know when to do that, even when it was clear that it wasn't going to go the way they wanted it to go.
Yeah.
And then when they hear a story like mine's, they're like, okay, well, Dre is proof that even when it doesn't look good, if I keep trying, it'll eventually work. Well, yes, but at the same time, that's not always the case.
Yeah.
So there's a fine line between the two.
Yeah, and you're 100% right. We're talking about quitting, being a quitter, and strategically looking at something and going, is this the vehicle that is best for me?
Correct.
And so how does that person listening right now, maybe they're not considering being a professional athlete any longer, but they're, maybe a year or two into their business and they're really struggling. Those first couple of years are tough. Maybe it's them and a person or two or three on their team, and they're not really profitable yet. And they're wondering like, dang, do I just shelf it and try something new? Or do I press in and become mentally tough, which we'll get to here shortly, and really make it through this piece? Like, this is the question that they might have. What would you say generally, obviously, because you don't know them?
Yes, that's the $1 million question right there.
That's right.
How do I know when I should keep pressing on this thing that is not currently working versus when I should walk away from it and find something else? That's basically the question of life right there,
Right.
because we only get one chance at this. So the number one thing I would say to someone in that position, especially in the business world, is because you don't need genetics to be successful in business. You just need the right strategy, the right systems, the right mindset. So where are you getting your information from? Because if your thing is not working, perhaps maybe you just have an inaccurate formula. An inaccurate formula just means you think that I need to do A, B, C, but you actually need to do D, E, F, G, and H. You're just not aware of what you're not aware of, basically unconscious incompetence. And you don't know what you don't know. So maybe you just need to plug into the right person who has the right information. And now you plug into what they're saying as opposed to what you thought. And now things start to work a little bit better. So sometimes people just have an inaccurate formula of what they're doing. For example, before I started playing basketball, Chaz, I was playing baseball, and I went to baseball practice every day and I did all the stuff I was told to do. I just didn't have any talent for baseball. My ceiling was a mediocre high school player. Had I stuck with baseball, because I don't want to be a quitter, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. But because I was smart enough to realize this is not the right vehicle. I knew I wanted to play sports, but baseball was not the vehicle. I chose a different vehicle of basketball, and then things started working. So sometimes you're just in the wrong place with the wrong formula and the wrong process. And the good news about the world that we live in today in 2024 is that the people who have the right information and the right process, they make themselves available and accessible to tell you that they have the information. Whereas back in the 90s, you had to hope that you had the right information. And if you didn't have it, you were out of luck. Now it's all available to you. All you had to do is plug into it.
Yeah, that's right. That's what they're doing right now, listening to you, of course. And of course, you've got resources online. Like you said, you're an YouTube OG, really. And so they, the millions and millions of views that you've gotten online, they can be one of those and find a lot of your content on this. But in that moment where I'm deciding, okay, is this the right vehicle or strategy, or is it the right, vehicle or strategy formula? It's really a deciding factor of what is my target. We both said the same thing. You said, I want to play sports. That was the aim, the chief aim. Mine was, at that point, to make money. Okay, so we just pivoted inside of the same goal. The goal never changed. The vehicle changed, or the strategy changed. And so, okay, we've given them plenty of that. Let's talk about that chief aim, though, because this is going to get us circled up to mental toughness. You didn't actually quit on baseball, because baseball was never the target. Sports was the target. And now I would even say it's bigger than that. Give us what is that bigger aim. Obviously, it was smaller back then. It was basketball, but really basketball even played into what your bigger aim is now. Tell us what that is and how that all kind of comes together.
Sure. The bigger aim today?
Yes, because I assume, looking backwards now, basketball was the point then, but now it plays even into what's you're doing now, which is probably a bigger level, a bigger picture.
Yeah, I can actually tell you both. So when I was playing ball, even when I was a kid, before I even got around to basketball, my vision for me was that I knew people were going to know my name. I knew people were going to know who I was. It was just a matter of how it was going to happen.
Love
So
it.
I knew it was going to be through something that could be kind of mass marketed, and a lot of people could see it all at the same time. Now, again, I was born in 1982, so we're talking about the 90s. What we're doing now did not exist. There was no such thing. But I knew that this is what I wanted to do, something where people can know my name. The big aim now today is we want work on your game to become the most ubiquitous term when it comes to personal and professional development. So if you make a copy of something, they call that a Xerox. So you take a picture, that's called what do they call it? Polaroid,
You're right.
right? You blow your nose, as a Kleenex.
Right.
We want work on your game to be like, just do it when it comes to personal and professional development.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I need to do is make sure that the word gets out to people about who I am, what we do, what this is, and why it exists. And I would guess most of the people listening to this never heard of me before this conversation.
Yeah.
So that's why we're doing this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're introducing it.
Yeah.
Okay, so just to kind of recap for the listener here, you initially it was baseball, then it turned into basketball, then it turned into helping other people, but then even that's formatted now to this huge worldwide synonymous household name of when people think personal development, they think I got to work on my game, whatever that game
That's
is
right.
for them. And so
That's right.
that didn't happen overnight, although the
No.
cool part is that what you said is way back then, what you wanted, truly, it wasn't even to play sports even. It was to be
Mhm.
known, or that you knew already that I'm going to be successful, right? And if you take my story and reverse it, it wasn't that I wanted to make money. Of course, I grew up poor. Like, of course I wanted to make money. But that wasn't like the ultimate chief aim. Truly, it was like, no, I'm going to be successful. People are going to know me, or fill in the blank of whatever success looks like. So here we are as young kids thinking the same thing generally, but that's developed over the course of time. What do you think, like the one thing that you've done to develop that maybe the listener either hasn't yet, or maybe he's in the process or she's in the process of doing, but can keep following along your track here?
When you say develop that, what are you referring to?
That like
That.
transition from one belief to the next, of it just keeping getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah, for me, I've always been pretty good at reframing and just creating that new vision in my mind. So when I first decided to stop playing basketball, I knew I had to create a new vision in my mind, because the vision would always come back to something I could do on the basketball court whenever I got excited, or I got an idea. How is this going to translate to doing it on the court?
Right.
But I knew I had to reframe in my mind. Okay, I need to translate that to now. How do I do it at a desk? How do I do it in a boardroom? How do I do it on the stage? How do I do it as a business person? So that comes back to mental conditioning. And the conditioning is just about, what are you telling yourself on a consistent basis? And the subconscious mind accepts things based on either emotionalization or repetition, or a combination of both. So when you repeat any thought, tell yourself anything over and over again, the subconscious mind eventually accepts it, no matter what it is. Even if it's not true, you will come to accept it and believe it as a truth. And then your subconscious will start to influence your habits and your behaviors to act on the things that your subconscious believes, because it controls about 85% of our thinking. See, we think when we're making decisions that we're consciously thinking about them, but most of our choices are made subconsciously, and then consciously we come up with a logical justification for them. So for me, I understood this concept of mental conditioning, and I just had to start rewiring in my brain. Okay, instead of framing everything through the lens of how do I do it physically as an athlete, even though I still work out every day, now is about how do I do it mostly just mentally? How do I do it intellectually as a business person and create my success that way? So that is a process. It doesn't happen overnight, but when you're conscious and intentional about it, then you have the ability to control it.
Yeah, let's go deep here for just a quick second, because this is juicy stuff. One of your quotes is that you will be at the level of your belief forever. Like, wait a second. Let me say that again. You will be at the level of your belief forever. Now, what you didn't say is that I'm stuck. What you didn't say is that I can't keep growing. But you said that I'm always going to be at my current level of belief. And so if I tie that to what you just said about my subconscious, knowing that I'm basically operating every single day without thinking, truly, 85, 95% of my daily actions are subconscious. And you're right. Like, I just had a little itch on my face. And so I picked up and I went like this over my beard. That was afterwards. I realized it. It was underneath that when this feeling happens, this is the reaction that my hand and brain does. And later, my
Mhm.
brain recognized it consciously that, oh, I have an itch and I move my hand. But it was already happening,
Mhm.
to your point.
Right.
And we do this in life, right? Situations happen and
Sure.
we react based on the things that our programming tells us to do. And then logically, we're making a justification on our reaction or our action. Okay, so inside of that, how do I change that? You said I have to be able to fuel it, right? But how do I change it
You can
so that the level of my belief continues to rise up so that I can continue going upon levels and growing?
Sure. So the answer to changing it is, first of all, we have to get conscious about the unconscious, because since 85% of our thinking is subconscious, meaning we are not consciously aware of the thoughts that are going through our heads and the habits that we're even engaging in, the way we think, the way we talk, etc. First thing is we have to start becoming conscious of them, which means we have to do a little bit more mental work. It takes a little bit more effort. And thinking is a job. Thinking is a task. People think thinking is just something that happens automatically, and it does on one level. But if you want to change your thoughts, you have to be thinking about what you're thinking. And that takes mental work. And the fact of the matter is, Chad, most people are mentally and physically lazy. And this is the reason why many people don't change, because it's easier to not change and just leave things as they are than it is to change and put the energy into adjusting your situation. That's just a reflection of the law of inertia. So what we need to do is get conscious about how we're thinking, catch ourselves in our thoughts, and ask yourself, what am I thinking right now? Why am I reacting this way? Why am I feeling this emotion right now? What led to this feeling? What led to this thought? What led to this behavior? And once we start asking ourselves those questions, and sometimes those are tough questions, because the answers that we're going to get are going to be based on things that we're so used to doing that even when we're aware of them, we may not even be willing to change them. But if you're aware of them, then at least now you have the opportunity, you have the potential to do something about them. But when you're completely unaware of, you can't do anything about. So once we become aware, we can decide, do I want to keep this habit? Do I want to alter this habit? Do I need to delete and replace this habit? But again, we have to become conscious of it first, which means we have to put a lot more mental energy into what is going on up here in our brains, so that we have, again, the potential and the ability to do something about it. And most people never even get to this point where we are in this conversation, let alone do they get to the point of changing it.
Yeah. Okay. So let's and I agree with you 100%. So you gave some really practicals in here, gave some questions. Listener, write those down. These are
Mhm.
amazing questions. But in essence, what you're saying is you slow down enough to catch yourself and ask
Mhm.
yourself, why am I even doing what I'm doing? Okay.
Right.
So I've slowed down. I've thought about what I'm thinking about. I've questioned why I'm doing what I'm doing. Now, what do I do with it? Because, like you said, questioning it and being aware of it or conscious of it is step one, or maybe step two. But the
Mhm.
next level of changing comes from,
Internal employee reviews. So I'll explain to you how this works. So anyone who's ever worked in a company, let's say corporation, I never was in any corporation long enough for this to happen, but from what I understand, they do employee reviews, right? Maybe it's every 90 days, maybe it's every 6 months, maybe it's once a year,
yeah,
right? You sit down with your supervisor or someone who's higher than you in rank, and they go over what you've done on the job, what you can do better, know what you're doing great, do more of, et cetera. We're going to give you a raise, you're fired, whatever. They tell you how you're doing. So you need to do internal employee reviews with your habits. And those reviews don't happen every 6 months or every quarter. They happen every day. Every day, you need to line up your habits, line up your behaviors, notice them, see what they are, and then ask yourself either A, this is a good habit. I'm going to keep it and do more of it on purpose. B, this habit needs to be altered or adjusted. I'm going to change it in these ways so I can get to the outcome I want. Or C, this habit is completely not serving me, is taking me backwards, because in life, there is no neutral. You're either getting better or getting worse. You're building or destroying. This habit is fired. Its key card is revoked. I'm calling security is going to escort this habit out of the building. You have to make a decision, and you have to be clear on it like this in black and white language, because when you're unclear, when we lack clarity on things, Chaz, what happens is that ambiguity leads us to doing nothing. See, when we're ambiguous on things, we end up doing nothing. We let things stay as they are. And before you know it, a year has gone by, 5 years have gone by. You still have the same goals you had 5 years ago. You've made no progress on them, not because you don't have the ability or the motivation or the skill or any of that, the information, the resources, common things people say. It's simply because you didn't get clear on what needs to stay and what needs to go, what needs to change and what needs to remain as it is. And when you have clarity, then it's much easier to take action.
yeah. And I think the clarity of not only how to get rid of, but you also gave the clarity of what is it that I want? You didn't say it quite like that,
Right.
but we've been talking about that this whole time. At first, define what I want. And then as I'm surveying all of my habits, right? Then I can go, well, does it help me get that? Nope, out.
Mhm.
Does it help me get that? Yes, keep it. But does it help me keep that?
Right.
Well, no, not really. Out, right? Like we can be honest.
Mhm.
But if we don't have that guiding, like what am I after here? Then that's gonna be really tough for them. And to that point, the clarity of the target, right? You said they got the same goals over and over, but they're too vague. They're too general. I want to be successful, Dre, but I'm not becoming successful. It's because how I haven't defined it, right?
Right. That's right.
Haven't
So
defined
a lot of people throw around the term successful. What does that mean? What is successful for you? What
Yeah.
denotes success? And each person gets to define their own success, but you have to define it. What is success? And you can have different levels of success. So there's success when you're in the gym. There's success when you're at your computer. There's success when you're with your family. So what makes something successful? And since most people are unclear on that, then it's hard to make decisions and it's hard to do anything or do anything different because you're not clear on what success is. So you can't look at something and say yes, no, because we don't know where we're going.
Hey, kings and queens, Chaz Wolfe. I want to talk to you about something that's super important to me. We put a lot of time and effort, we meaning myself and my team, into this podcast, into the content that goes out every single day. And if you have been getting any sort of value or insight from this, we want it to be able to reach other business owners too. So we would love if you would like, comment, share, leave a review, post, share again, all of the things on social media, on all the different platforms, or even on the podcast mediums of Apple and Spotify. We would love to be able to get our content into more hands, more entrepreneurs, so they can grow their business as quick as possible. Together, we are building a community of like-minded entrepreneurs who are committed to growing their businesses to new heights. So let's do this. Let's help each other. Let's help each other grow. Yeah, I want to put a situation in front of you, and I want you to tell me what you think, really for the benefit of the listener. The phrase that you used, eventually, does it serve me, in essence, which is a phrase that I've used for a long, long time. And so I agree with you. I look at things as we've just discussed. What's my target? Does this serve me? If it doesn't, I don't do it. If it does, I'm like 100 down, focused, absolutely do it, no quitting, that type of thing. And so for this example, recently, in the last probably year, maybe not quite, I decided that sugar no longer served me of any kind. And so I remember posting on my Facebook maybe 9 or 10 months ago about how I had decided that sugar doesn't serve me. And there was a gal who made a comment about basically everything in moderation, and like, she gets joy from eating whatever that was that she really liked, cake or whatever, and it brought her joy. That's how it served her. And
Right.
so I want to know your thoughts on that. But before I ask you your thoughts on that, I actually thought the same thing before she said it, before I'd posted it, before I'd made the decision. I thought, I really like chocolate chip cookies. I mean, Dre, still today, even though I haven't eaten them in almost a year, I think chocolate chip cookies are great. One of my favorite things to consume. But if the ingredients don't serve me, then it was an easy like, oh, this makes sense. It doesn't. It's out. Boom. And then the question I followed it with was, if it serves me by bringing joy, and that's why I'm going to keep it, is it the only area that I'm getting joy? Like, do I have to get joy here? Because I know it doesn't serve me, but I'm keeping it around in that example for her because it brings me joy. And I was like, no, I have joy in so many other areas. I don't need this joy. It's out. Tell me your thoughts on that whole thing. I'd be curious.
So the first thing is I'm not a fan of the phrase everything in moderation. Number one, I'm not a fan of that phrase.
Pretty vanilla.
Yes, exactly. And I've told my audiences vanilla only works in ice cream, and it was one other thing, maybe cake frosting. And speaking of sugar,
Yeah.
so I'm not a big fan of everything in moderation. I don't like when I even hear people say that.
Yeah.
It just sounds like average. It just reeks of averageness, being in the middle. Yeah, just joining the masses, everything in moderation.
Yeah.
So no, I don't even like that phrase. So as far as the not having the sugar, that's very interesting. I couldn't live like that because I got sugar on my desk right here. So I had to throw everything away. And this includes fruit.
Not fruit.
Okay. So
processed sugar.
Chemical sugar. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. So first of all, I like the fact that you made a decision. It's a clear decision, and there's no ambiguity with it. because all you got to do is read the labels. Okay, so you can't eat the Snickers bar I had 2 days ago. You can't eat the Skittles I had yesterday. You can't eat the whatever this is on my meal delivery service. Give me a little snack. I know there's sugar in there, so that you couldn't eat that. You can't drink Gatorade. All right, no soda.
Right. Nope.
All right, so all those sugars, yes or no. It's a clear binary, yes or no. And that kind of clarity, as far as life goes, a lot of people don't have it. And when they have that, when you have that clarity, it's much easier just to make decisions. You can do things a lot faster. You can be a lot more decisive. There's a whole lot less ambiguity. There's a lot less indecision in life, and then you can move forward on whatever you want to move forward on much more easily.
Yeah, I agree. I want to give the listener an encouragement because you actually did it, subconsciously there, even by saying that you still, had a Snickers bar and stuff like that. Just in order to be mentally tough, you don't have to get rid of sugar. You don't have to fill in the blank. You don't have to do anything. But what you do have to do is whatever's right to get wherever you want to go. And so once you define that, then it's like, do you want it or do you not want it? Because what I have found is that people say that they want something, but then they're not willing to actually do it. Talk to the crowd just for a half second on, on that. That's a whole can. I get it, but just give us your thoughts.
Right. Yeah. When it comes to people saying that they want things, I mean, all of us want a whole lot of things. The biggest challenge, Chaz, is are we willing to pay whatever the price is to get it? So the first thing we need to do once we decide we want something, because there's nothing wrong with wanting things. You can want everything that you want. The next thing you need to do is figure out what does it cost to get it? And cost can be literal, like financially, but it also can be, what do I have to give if I want to lose 20 pounds? So how often do I have to go to the gym? How many miles do I have to run? How many bottles of water do I have to drink? How many burpees do I have to do? Right. So you need to know what the cost is and then decide, am I willing to pay this cost or am I not willing to pay this cost? And that's fine. And if you decide you don't want to pay the cost, then that's fine. You can walk away and do something different. But we need to find out what that cost is so that we can, in our minds, decide what we are going to move forward with and what we're not going to move forward with, because as humans, we have some limitations. We can only do one thing at a time. We can only be in one physical place at a time. And we all are literally on the clock because we all going to reach a point called death where we don't have any more time to do anything else. So we have to decide what we are going to do, what the priorities are. Hopefully we can get as much in as we can in the time that we have, but we have to decide what are we doing and what are we not doing, and not have so many things kind of sitting in the mental parking lot of, I want to do that. I'll eventually get to it, but there's no time on it. And that's what tragically happens to a lot of us, because we have all these things that we want to do, but we never get urgent and serious about actually getting to it.
Yeah. That clarity piece that you gave to us a few minutes ago is a big part of that, because if they're drifting, as Napoleon Hill calls it in Outwitting the Devil, if they're drifting, then there's no clarity. And so then therefore they're just going to talk about the things that they quote unquote want, but they don't actually really want them because they're just kind of drifting through life. They don't actually paying any attention to what they're doing or what their thoughts are, even going back to our earlier conversation. You've said publicly that you were just foolish enough to believe that you could fill in the blank, be successful, play pro ball. Like, there's been a lot of things that you've been able to accomplish even at a young age. And so what's that foolishness enough to believe feeling or belief that you have looking back?
Well, looking back, I wasn't even seeing it that way. Is something I can phrase it that way now, because when whenever I'm telling the story, like, 1 year high school, walked on and played in college at D3, and then, hustled my way into playing pro ball. It sounds a lot more heroic than it felt. I guess is the best way to describe it. Because when you're in the midst of it, you're not thinking about, oh, this is going to be an amazing story because I'm going to make it. And then 20 years later, I'll be telling the story on a podcast. I wasn't thinking that way.
Right.
I was just thinking, all right, what's the next thing that needs to happen? What needs to be true in order for me to take the next step? And that's just the way I would thought. What would need to be true for me to play pro ball? Well, somebody had to sign me. Well, if I'm going to play overseas, I've never even been out of the country. How am I going to play overseas? They don't know me. Well, an agent, they know the agent. So I need to get an agent, but no agents are trying to sign me. So how do I get an agent to want to sign me? Well, I need some proof that I can play against pro level players. Well, I played D3, so that's not proof. So I got to go to this exposure camp. So let me play against these guys, and that can be proof. So then when I went to exposure camp, okay, now I can go call agents. Now I have something to show them. So all I was doing was just deconstructing. And what we call that now, I call it the reverse roadmap. So we just created that roadmap in reverse for what would need to be true in order for this to happen, this to happen, this to happen. And I just worked backwards through those steps of what I needed to do. So I knew I could play, and I just needed to prove it somewhere that mattered in front of people who mattered, and I needed some evidence. I needed footage. So it was just a process that I had to go through, but I wasn't looking at it as I'm dumb enough to keep trying, because in that myopic world, you run into a whole bunch of players who played D3 and small colleges and JUCOs and didn't really play college ball at all, but they all think they can play pro ball. So we were all at that exposure camp.
Yeah.
So when you're in that world, it doesn't seem that outlandish because you're around a bunch of people who are all thinking the same thing.
Right.
Now, when you get into the bigger world and you're outside of that space, then it seems more, more incredulous, I guess, for lack of a better term, simply because you're around a bunch of people who don't think that way.
Yeah.
But at the time, I mean, I was young. I had enough time to go and try stuff, right? If I had been 35 trying it, it'd been a different story than if I was 22 trying it. But again, I was never looking at it as I was dumb enough to keep trying. But now I can say that now I'm looking back on the story. Now, somebody who tried the same thing, Chaz, and didn't succeed, they probably wouldn't use that language. Right.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I tell people all the time is that, because I would get this question often, especially from athletes, and I'm sure you get it also from entrepreneurs. Now, entrepreneurship is a little bit different from sports in that you can be an entrepreneur your entire life. You can be an entrepreneur for 50 years. Sports career windows are extremely small. You only have this much time to be an athlete. Like if I decided I wanted to play basketball right now, it's too late because I don't have the physicality to do it. So when it comes to the sports world, I would get people asking me, well, Dre, how do I know whether I should keep going or if I should quit? And there is no black and white answer to that question in anything. There's no black and white. If this is happening, quit. If this is happening, keep going. The real answer is we won't know till we get to the end of the story.
Yeah.
And the whole thing with me, and given my background, the reason why I can tell this story now, and it is a great story, great origin story and background story, is because I ended up being successful and I ended up, quote unquote, making it as an athlete. So the story sounds great. But somebody who had the same background who didn't make it, they're not going to tell this story. Their story has to be a little bit different, and they have to figure out a different way to talk about it because it doesn't end the exact same way. So we don't know till we get to the end of the story whether you were right or wrong.
Yeah, and I love that you've positioned it as a story, because even for that person who maybe did have the exact same circumstances, but then didn't play final, pro ball in the final storyline there, is that truly the end of their story? We both know, no, that's absolutely not the end of the story. It wasn't the end of your story. That's just a segment of your story that you can leverage now. And so for that other person who might be listening, literally it was like, oh, I tried to play, that's me, The cool thing is that the story's not done, and you can still leverage how I pressed and pushed and tried to play pro ball, and it didn't work, but the rest of the story.
That's right.
That's the beauty of it, is that we control the rest of the story. Even still today, even though, like, quote unquote, Dre, you've made it and now you're helping other people make it, you're still today writing your story. And the Dre at 50 is going to look back and be like, dude, I was on this crazy podcast with this other guy, like the white version of me, and we talked back and forth, and it was like this incredible conversation, but like that was like 30 years ago, man. And maybe we're on a beach together or something. You know what I mean? So we can still write the story from here. And so that's the encouragement to the listener. You just to kind of fill in some gaps here for the listener, you've done 4 TED Talks, but you've applied like 30 something times. We can keep going down the list, right, of all the things that you maybe like hit the ceiling on and then press through. So I think that there's like a commonality here. Give us something that you pressed up against that you actually did pivot away from outside of baseball.
Outside of baseball,
Mm-hmm.
man, well, someone was asking me this the other day, but I've probably put out, for every product that I put out that did pretty well, like made sales, I probably got 20 that didn't make any sales. Maybe 0, maybe only a handful. Maybe I put it out and said, this product actually, when I'm explaining it to the public, doesn't sound as good as it sounded in my head. So I've had plenty of those. I remember there was a time when I was going to sell autographed photos of myself. Nobody bought any.
That was a huge belief builder.
Yeah. And this is right around the time when the social media and all that was starting to become a thing. So selling a picture of yourself, I guess, wasn't that good of a deal. Or maybe I'm just not that as famous as I thought I was.
Yeah.
So that was one. But as far as products, again, I've created so many, especially back in the basketball space. I created a bunch, and some of them did really well. And they basically made up for the rest of them, the 80-20 principle. So 20% of the products made up for the 80% that didn't do anything.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you put that in there, because obviously, with the story that you've given so far, they might be wondering, well, it's just a golden glove, everything he touches, he wins at. But we both know that that's not true either. And so I thank you for that. For some kicks and giggles here, like, you've got one video from back in the day. I don't know the exact date, but it's got over 1 million views. There's absolutely no talking. It's just you running drills. And millions of people have seen this, and hundreds and hundreds, maybe even a couple thousand comments. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, but did you ever think that would happen? Like, that would be maybe one of your ones that clicked and helped bring you to where you are?
You mean the video itself?
The video
or
itself,
doing
and
the
or
video
just like
period?
the creation, like when you were thinking, like, all right, let me set up the camera and we're going to run some drills. Like, what were you in the moment thinking? And then now what do you think looking back on that?
So I think I got a couple of videos that are at that level. Those I pretty much knew once I saw how they started to go. So when I got on YouTube with the basketball stuff, I could see by the way the audience was responding, like, okay, I'll just keep doing this.
Yeah.
But I never had a video go like viral. Those videos got to 1 million views over years, many years of being viewed. I had a piece of content. I was looking through my old stuff just the other day. So it's funny that you mentioned this, Chaz. I tell people I got like 20,000 pieces of content out there. I'm over 20,000 when it comes to going viral. I've never gone viral, nothing. So only thing is I put out 20,000 pieces of content. Now, then you just multiply that by a few eyeballs each one, and then you have a name, and then you can Google yourself, and there's a bunch of results. I knew sometimes when I made videos that this one is going to be good, this one is going to pop off. A lot of people are going to see it, but at the same time, the ones for which I was right, I thought that about 10 different videos, 1 out of 10, it actually did it.
Yeah.
Right. So there are times I put out a video, I'm like, this is going to be amazing. People are going to love this. And it didn't really do anything.
Yeah.
Might get 500 views and it dies. All right. And then I'll put out something and I'm like, I don't even like this that much. I don't even think this is that good. I might not even put this out. Then I put it out and the audience loves it.
Yeah.
So you never really know.
Yeah. Your big project that you're working on now, you've already made it clear. It's work on your game, becoming synonymous with personal development. I believe you have it tattooed on your arm as well. Like,
I do.
You want to talk about some deep belief, right? What is work on your game? Make that clear to the listener. How can they engage with you? And we'll put all this in the show notes too. I'm not just like, hey, tell me about it. I want you to like really walk me through. I think we've done a pretty good job already in the show of walking through what they might experience with working with you. But give us just a little bit more. What is work on the game, and why would an entrepreneur, or really anybody for that matter, want to engage with your product to be able to develop themselves?
Well, thank you for the question. So work on your game is where we take the tools to help athletes get to the top 1% of the sporting world, and we translate those tools over to the business world and to everyday life to help professionals perform at their highest level, do so consistently, and of course, make more money in your business. That is literally what we do here at Work on Your Game. And it started with that framework. It started with mindset. That's where it began. So the discipline, confidence, mental toughness, personal initiative. That's the first piece of what we do. Then it moves into the strategy. We talked about the roadmap in reverse. Then we move into the system. How do we do the same things the same way every time? In other words, how do we create that consistency of outcome? And then the last piece is the accountability. How do we make sure that everything is working as it's supposed to be? And how do we make sure everyone is working as they are supposed to? So those are our 4 pieces: mindset, strategy, systems, and accountability.
I love it. And who's a good fit for work on? I mean, you want to make it synonymous, so I get it. It's everybody, but right now, someone's listening, call them out.
The good fit is the ambitious person who is ambitious. You have
right now,
big goals. You have big things that you want to achieve. You're not okay with just being okay. You're not okay with just being amongst the masses, being amongst the group and what you do. And not only are you ambitious, but you have a sense of urgency about reaching that ambition. And you appreciate someone who's just a straight shooter, where you can just get to the point, talk about where you're at, where you want to go, what you feel like might be in your way. And you just want to make sure that you have crystal clarity as to where you're at, what you need to do next, and you know exactly what those next steps are that you need to take. That's really what I like to give people. And when I'm having my conversations with people who I work with, those are the things they most point out. Like, I appreciate that now I have clarity. I came here confused and not knowing, but now I'm clear on what I need to do next. And next time we talk, I have those taken care of. We can get on to the next thing. So I'm looking for that ambitious person who also has the urgency, and they have the skills, they have the tools. It's just that they need clarity on what to do, how to do it, when and where to do it.
Yeah. I just want to put a little plug in here because we've just met here today. but I just think so highly of you already. And there's a lot of people that help listeners, entrepreneurs, me, you, whatever, get clear. And I love that.
Yeah.
That's a huge part of what you do. But I think you displayed an amazing show here today of what it looks like after clarity. Because you can't just be like, hey, I want to work with you, Dre, and you got me clear, and that's cool. But then like, we'll see you later. There's multiple steps after that. You outlined them, and that's what I actually appreciate about you the most. Is in your story, it wasn't just the maybe naive or foolish belief. Yes. It wasn't just the mental toughness to go, you know what? I'm going to freaking stick to it. It wasn't just the, clarity on this is exactly what I want. Here's what I'm going to go do. It was the doing. It was the deciding and then the doing. And of course you gotta move that and modify that as you go and as you change. But you gave plenty of examples of how you made it to the pros or how you've been successful in business through all those things and then execution. And so that's what I just appreciate you about. You didn't toot your own horn in that way enough, I felt like, and so I wanted to do it for you.
Well, thank you.
Dre, I got one last question here for you, brother. If you had the opportunity just to roll back the clock, you got the younger Dre in front of you, you tap him on the shoulder, and you whisper in his ear, what do you tell him?
Starting investing in yourself as early as possible. That's the number one thing that I would tell my children that. And that's what I would tell my younger self. Invest in yourself as early as possible in forms of the material you're taking in. Of course, you can financially invest in yourself and getting around the right people. 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, love that. The impact has not only been great for you, but I can second those things. That's what I'm currently doing with my children and what I would absolutely do with myself. The next step for somebody to find you, give us a quick spot on how they can engage with you or find you online.
The best place to find me online outside of social media is workonyourgameuniversity.com. That's where we do. That's where all of our focus and attention is right now. That's where we do all our coaching, our programs, etc. As far as social media, I'm on every single platform. I'm public on every platform, so I'm very easy. I'm hard not to find, so I'm very easy to find. Probably most active on Instagram at Dre Baldwin, but we publish on every platform at least 6, 7, 8 times a day. So as I said, I'm hard to not find. Just look me up on whatever your favorite platform is. I'm there.
Yeah, I love it. Dre, you're an incredible, not only human, but a mind that's now impacting others by the thousands or maybe even millions at this point. So congratulations to you and your success. Thank you for being with us for just a short time, pouring into those that we may never even know by name. That's how I define a king. So thanks for being here, brother. Appreciate you.
Well, Chaz, I appreciate you sharing your platform. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for listening to Gathering the Kings today. I hope that you were able to pull out a few nuggets to go apply into your business right away. More importantly, though, I hope that you're realizing that it takes more to be successful than just being by yourself, doing it all on your own, carrying the weight all by yourself. What I have realized, not only in my own journey from multiple businesses and multiple different industries, and now interviewing over 200 or 300 other very successful 7, 8, and 9-figure business owners, is that it's tough to do it alone. And so Gathering the Kings exists to bring together successful entrepreneurs. In fact, we are putting together 1,000 kings, specifically who are grateful but not done. We're intentionally assembling kings who fight tooth and nail for their business, family, and communities. And here's what we believe, that in the pursuit of excellence in those areas, that it ignites within us the responsibility to govern power and forge a lasting legacy. So if that relates and resonates with you, and you know that you need people around you, sharp, qualified, other very successful business owners, I want you to go to gatheringthekings.com. I want you to take a look at what we're doing and see if it makes sense for you to be part of our pursuit to 1,000 kings. Talk soon.